is hardware ignored in cybersecurity? Why is it mainly software based right now?
Okay. For decades, we have relied on the software to safeguard us, and for good reason. Software is flexible, easy to deploy, and easy to scale. So that's where the investment money will go, and innovation will continue to follow. So naturally, the cybersecurity dollars will have to go into the software. Yeah. But we understand that software is reactive by design, and it depends on updates, patches, and human actions. It's kind of like a never-ending games, right? And it operates, more importantly, it operates in an ever-changing, evolving environment, always have to reacting to whatever the attacker come up with next. So meanwhile, the attack surface has grown massively with digitalization. The attacker have evolved too, not just in the technology, but also in the business model. And hacker, like for example, ransomware as a service is a perfect example. So hacker only need to write once and to get the lucrative rewards, right? And defender side, you have to ensure that you are right every single time. Yeah, hackers see this and continue to exploit the human error at scale. So this is why things must change. We need to shift the advantage back to the defender. And the way to do it is to lock down the security at the hardware layer. So the physical environment, that is where our data and system setting actually reside. So by embedding such a dynamic AI-driven detection directly into the hardware, we can create a stable, independent foundations that attacker they can't manipulate. So this, I'm not here to say that it's going to replace software, but it complements it. And software will continue to adapt on the outside and maintaining the threats library and protecting against the known risks, but the hardware will secure the inside, delivering the real-time detections at the physical layer. And together, they create the architectures that we need for the future of cybersecurity.
Got it. So I guess you're saying security should be sort of reimagined from the ground up, but is that just enough? I think should we maybe use like a multi-layered approach, and especially considering the human element, and maybe Jocelyn, you can comment on that.
Sure. Well, in fact, I was thinking it's about the multiple layers. No single layer is going to protect you. Not the human by itself, not even the hardware by itself, but not software. But hardware is grossly underrepresented. You know, there's 4,000 cybersecurity companies in the U.S. alone, 24,000 globally. Very few of those are hardware, certainly doing the types of things that Cam and her company are doing. And so it's been left out. And I think part of why it's left out too, when you picture a hoodie and a hacker, you're not picturing them working on a PCB board. You're picturing them with hands on keyboards. And so we always associate the hacks from the software. You know, I worked at Intel, I've worked at all these other semiconductor companies, you know, and one of the funny things about hardware companies is you always have more software engineers at a hardware company than hardware engineers. But it means that we put more focus on software and to not give the right amount of emphasis on the importance of the physical layer, of the hardware layer, is partly why we're in the challenges we have now. I mean, how long have we been here today? Every 2.5 hours, a company is hacked again, you know, at a $4.88 million level, except the ones being hacked today aren't going to know for 204 days, because that's the average time, and then it takes another 3 months of containment. And then what does that mean? Their data is getting out. I was at a Silicon Valley company when the FBI came calling to say we'd been hacked 6 months prior, and our IP was gone, and where it went was not good. And so if you don't, you know, if the company doesn't even know, and the government's coming to tell you, and then at the consumer level, you know, all the data of customers and users that is stolen and sold on the not on the dark web. Watch, you know, your items and mine are, you know, sold like flea market items on eBay. And that's why every 37 seconds, there's another victim of cybercrime at the consumer level. So all of this means we need to be doing better, and we've been ignoring the physical layer.
Got it. That's a great bridge between sort of, you know, technology and people. Moving to the investment side, Melissa, maybe you can talk about like what has been sort of the blind spot in as it comes to investments in cybersecurity.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, just to echo what's already been said, right? I think blind spots are, while compliance, a lot of what we've been focused on in cybersecurity has been how do we check the box? How do we address what we already know, as Cam's mentioned? But prevention is an area that I think is a blind spot. I think also resilience, being a resilience-minded environment is critical, where we need to be thinking about how do we actually address our world if we are attacked, right? And so I think that's a piece that's been a blind spot. I mean, if you think about your home, right? Like the layers of defense that you want to put in place, it's not just at the perimeter, but it's also inside, but it's also like, what do you do if something happens, right? So resilience, prevention, detection, these are all various layers that we also need to keep in mind as our attack surface, as our own personal data is becoming more and more available to attackers and to those that are trying to enrich themselves.
Got it. And so, Melissa, following up on that, why do you think sort of detection is at the forefront instead of prevention for organizations?
Well, I think as Cam's mentioned, detection is a little bit flashier, right? It's a little sexier. You know, you've been able to catch things, but also I think it's a reactive mindset. It's something happened, we need to fix that, right? And so whereas prevention is hard, it's not as flashy, the ROIs are less. I mean, it's just like in security, right? When it comes to public safety, you don't actually know that you've prevented a bad guy from doing something unless you actually knew and caught them in advance through intelligence and that sort of thing. So I think that getting to a prevention, and you know, while detection, I wouldn't necessarily consider it an overinvestment, but I think that we also have been underinvesting in prevention. And so I think the beauty is, and the opportunity is where we combine both detection and prevention.
Got it. Very helpful. Cam, for you, you mentioned, you know, looking into the future, obviously AI is the future, and you mentioned embedding AI in hardware. Can you talk about how that helps with cybersecurity?
Okay, so immediately if we embed the AI directly into the hardware, we are able to achieve to be proactive and autonomously, which means that they operate in the, we have to understand that the weaknesses of the inherent weaknesses of the software, because they operate in the same plane as the workload that they are trying to protect. And attacker, they can just tamper with or bypass these defenses. And especially when the threat is unknown or 0 day. So when AI is embedded inside the hardware, the security engine is isolated in its own secure environment. It doesn't depend on the patches or signature or even the OS update. So instead, it will constantly monitor the system activities at the physical layer. That is the actual flow of the data, the access pattern, and also the commands. So it's something that deviates from the safe behavior. The hardware AI, they can instantly add on it and lock down or even kill the malicious process or cut off the access. So maybe let me give you a simple analogy here. So imagine that if you lost your key, your house key, or someone has stolen it, they can just walk right in, no alarm, no resistance. And if no one at home, they can just quickly move your variables out of the door, right? And now here, with embedded AI in the hardware, that will change the game, because the moment when the thief, they start moving your variables, the system will sense it and lock the door instantly. So in cyber world, in cyber terms, that is when ransomware, they started to encrypting or exfiltrating your data. And our X5 hardware detect that behavior in real time and shut it down before the damage is done. And more importantly is because it happened in the memory, that is where your data and the system actually live. Software, they can be bypassed or tricked, but at the physical layer, every action will leave a trace. So just like a polygraph that I mentioned during my keynotes, you cannot hide. That's the power of embedding AI into the hardware itself. It doesn't just guard the door, it protects the data and the system inside, whether it's known threats or unknown threats in real time. This is why this shift is so critical if we wanted to stop the zero-day attack.
Got it. And you mentioned that AI is a double-edged sword. So AI also creates a lot of issues, especially at the human level. So maybe, Jocelyn, you can talk about what are the challenges that AI creates for sort of human protection and online safety.
Yeah, and I think the last panel was queued us up perfectly, because when Alan and Robert were talking about, how the perfect accuracy, some of us were seeing, AI cloned images of people in conversation a year ago. And there was this noticeable delay in its response time. And that's exactly what Robert and Alan were talking about, is that's gone. And imagine where it's going to be 12 months from now. Because too much of cybersecurity at the company level, at the human level, at the government level, still relies on a certain amount of human verification. And now with AI, our ability as humans to spot things, which already we don't have a great track record, if I didn't make it clear by the statistics I mentioned. But besides that, now it's going to go away, because just like they were talking about, you're in a whiteout condition, or you watch a murder, or you experience a beautiful, sunset. Your senses believe what you're seeing.
Right.
So AI, and now, besides ransomware as a service, you've now got, DAS, right? So deepfakes as a service, $99 subscription, cybercrime investors making good money. And so it's coming, and it's already here, but it's coming to everybody. And the biggest challenge with this is that zero day is not only bad from the time it's exposed until it's closed, but you've got this long tail of the fact that companies and individuals aren't updating. I can't tell you how many people I train who are like, oh, I keep putting off my software updates. And it's like, well, let me just tell you what's happened in that window. Whether you're a company or an individual at home, the weakness has been published along with that. So now every hacker on the planet and every wannabe hacker can read what the weakness is, look for somebody who hasn't updated it yet, and there's your attack surface. So they've just published that what your weakness is. So zero day is important. So what we really need is something that can override the human element to protect us from ourselves, and to protect our companies from our employees, and protect us as individuals from the people in our trust circle who are going to be duped by these deepfakes, because it's already happening, and it only takes, the saying we have in cybersecurity, the bad guys only have to be right once.
Yeah.
It's true.
Got it. Thank you. The topic of the panel is sort of rebuilding trust. So, Cam, what is your definition of restoring trust? What does it mean for you?
Trust? Trust in the digital world means trust no one. And verify everything, yeah. And especially at the human age, that means that when you do something, you have to pause before you act. So to think about whether this request is legit, or does it sound very urgent or unusual. So if maybe CEO email you for a wire transfer, don't just reply, but call a second source to confirm. Or even if you look at a link that looks slightly off, don't just click but check through another channel. That's how we avoid falling into the social engineering trap. But deep down inside, where our data and system actually live, we cannot just depending on the human judgment. That's where hardware-based intelligence can come in. And at this layer, basically the hardware solutions, it trusts no one. It's totally, truly zero-day, zero trust kind of infrastructures. So it will detect anomalies in memory or storage, and it will protect autonomously. Even when we human make a mistake, it will protect us. So for me, restoring trust means that anything that about human, we have to verify and trust no one, and let the hardware secure the core. That's how we get a peace in mind where the attacker, since that they only need to be right once, yeah.
Got it. And Jocelyn, maybe you can talk about like how do we address those risks that come from the human element?
So one thing about zero trust for us as humans, most people, it's a common term in cybersecurity, and it's a term that people outside of cybersecurity, bristle at, and I understand why. But if you think about it, there's the positive aspect of it that you think about. I mean, if you're a parent, you want to have zero trust that your child won't fall off of a high space, so you protect them from that. If you have a dog, or you have a fence, because you don't trust that they're not going to run out in the street and get hit by a car. So it's a protective element, and companies and people need to have zero trust around, again, protecting us from ourselves. But I think the number one thing about behavioral is, like the MGM attack that took down MGM for the 10-day period and stuff was from one call from the hacker group to the help desk to get a password change, masquerading as an employee, from just the simple information that was available on the employee's LinkedIn profile that got them passed through security. So when you think about the vulnerabilities, that's why it's so critically important that that we have to acknowledge the weaknesses we have, the vulnerabilities we have in our human element, and protect ourselves from it. And that's why we have to have the redundancies. We have to have not just the right access controls and thinking about who's got access to what in our personal life and our business and our employees and everything, but we also have to be thinking about our systems. And when you can add something at the hardware level that helps create that, it's literally like your dog's running out in the street and something stops it. That's good. That's what we need, more of that, because otherwise your odds, are not as good. You want to keep increasing your odds. What is the old thing about an ISP? Like the uptime of, I can't remember the exact numbers, but 99.99% uptime is what, 4 hours of downtime a year? That's equivalent of like how many breaches?
5 nines.
Okay,
5 nines.
right, 5 nines. And if you do 4 nines, they're down for 3 days, right? It's the same thing. So you've got to have redundancies in your security, and and that includes the human element, and making sure that we're recognizing our vulnerabilities and protecting ourselves and everybody in the ecosystems we're part of from that.
Got it. Thank you. So coming to ecosystems, Melissa, maybe you can talk about how various industries can work together for cyber defense and cyber protection.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, partnerships are a big deal, right? I think that it's hugely important that we all recognize that the attacker, the bad guy, they don't care if you're a banking sector, or if you're a telecom sector, or if you're in tech, right? They're just taking advantage of the common weaknesses that exist across these platforms. And so where we can be sharing intelligence, threats, and just in general bridging where the best practices are. I think partnerships is a big way to help kind of create an ecosystem of defenses. But then also just double clicking on sort of this layer of defenses, and recognizing that, secure by design architectures are going to be a really huge way we get at the prevention, the detection, and the resilience of our whole cybersecurity posture. And then of course recognizing, the human piece of it that crosses all of those layers is hugely important in our cyber hygiene. and kind of, listening to our spidey senses when we think something's not quite right.
Got it. So to round out, maybe Melissa, starting from you, what do you think is some of the big innovations or changes that you envision happening in the cybersecurity industry over the next few years?
Well, for sure, I mean, kind of like really elevating sort of this mindset of focusing on prevention and resilience, right? Like I've been kind of, harping on that a lot, but I think that that's a big place where not only have we had blind spots, but opportunities for where we can be pushing forward in those spaces. And, really on the hardware layer, secure by design, really pushing forward on helping keep humans from having to make those choices and allowing the core to protect itself.
Cam,
Yeah,
what-
I totally agree with Melissa. The biggest shift should be the mindset. Yeah, and especially we have been relying on the software. So the instinct is to believe that software can do everything to protect us. But I'm not saying that software is not good, but it's essential. But the different environments lead to a very different result. This is why companies like Apple, they build a closed ecosystem controlling every entry point. So the more well-defined of the environment, the safer it becomes. Cybersecurity has stalled in same approach for decades, and we really need to think out of box. That means that separating the security from the operation and let the core protections run autonomously at the hardware layer while software continue to handle the outside threats. Yeah, thanks.
Got it. What about you, Jocelyn? What do you think is the biggest changes that we should think about?
Well, the thing that I would really like to see, and what I'm trying to start a movement in, is people recognizing, taking, just feeling and being empowered and taking control of their own safety. People don't expect someone, the government, a company, to show up at their house and lock their door and lock their windows every night,
Right.
but they're expecting that on their cell phones and devices. And I want people to see that. I wrote a book about it, it's coming out in a few weeks. It's about, everybody has to realize you've got to practice digital defense in this AI world that we're in. And most people are abdicating that. And the downside of that is we've got more and more victims and this sense of hopelessness. I got into cybersecurity, by the way, from becoming a cybercrime victim. I was working in semiconductor, but I was targeted, and it devastated my life. And I had to figure out how to come back from that. And what happened to me is happening to people, every 37 seconds. It's going to get worse with AI. And so we need more protections in place. We do need protections at the hardware and software levels and all. But the way all of that even gets implemented is by people deciding to take back control or getting control really for the first time. And I just encourage, and I want everybody to not abdicate responsibility for their own safety.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. Maybe I'll open it up to questions, starting with you.
So we mostly talked about